Welcome to the Zeducation Podcast. Kia ora whānau. Welcome to the Zeducation Podcast, where you come to level up as a leader and win in your career and life. Today I'm joined by Michael Moka, Te Rarawa, Ngāti Hine, Ngā Puhi and Āuau, Enua of Mangaia, and the founder of Indigenous Growth Limited. Michael's work is all about bringing Te Ao Māori into leadership and business, helping organizations grow their people, honor culture, and do more than just tick the box on diversity. In this episode, we'll unpack his journey, how Indigenous growth worldviews shape the way that he leads, and what that means for you, and if you want to lead with more courage, authenticity, and impact. So, whānau, let's get into it. Welcome to the show. Michael Moka, how are you doing, brother?
Hey, tēnā koe, brother. Thanks for giving us a call up, my friend. I appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. I appreciate it. I go back to the first time I heard about you from different clients, different people, employees. Man, have you heard of Michael Moka? I was like, no, I haven't. He's like, what? Indigenous Growth? I'm like, no, I haven't. So I did my research and I found a TED Talk of you back in 2016. I was like, man, how come I didn't know this guy sooner? And then as I got into more research, I found out, man, just the amazing work that you're doing in the Indigenous, bringing culture and diversity into, especially what people call like the Western world, the modern world. Right? Like how do you bring that stuff forward into your mahi and into everything that you do? So I love the space that you're in. You're creating an amazing impact, especially for our people. But our audience loves stories. They love to hear where it all started, right? So tell us about Indigenous Growth for you, my brother.
I'm quite fortunate, dear brother, that the vision and mission of Indigenous Growth actually comes from, some people are very fortunate. They always say that there's two most important days in your life. Day one, when you're born. Day two, the day you know why. And I'm quite fortunate that at a very, very young age, I knew why, right? And that's a lot of it's around the background. So to other people, it may seem quite dark, right? It might be a lot of trauma in terms of upbringing, etc. And when I think about the vision of Indigenous growth to conquer the poverty cycle, I'm meaning those poverty statistics that Indigenous people globally are overrepresented in. And I was part of those statistics, really. So everything that you've seen on the Once Were Warriors, on the news, on all of that, that was just the norm. One thing I always realized as being the youngest, or second youngest, sorry to my little brother, he might kick me up the butt for saying that, is that you're always looking for light, right? You're quite optimistic. You can be quite naive. You haven't seen how the world hurts and all of that. So you're always looking for that light. And so for me, everything comes from being part of those statistics, but also going, man, we can do better, right? Like there's a different way. There's, I'm always seeing the rose amongst the thorns, really, and I noticed that quite young. So for Indigenous growth, and because I can talk about that just an hour by itself, is that for me, I never saw my parents happy, right? So when I have a look at the statistics, like, yeah, I have my mum, I have my dad, we have our family. We didn't know we grew up poor, just four families in a 3-bedroom, but you got a lounge as well, 14, 15. As soon as the person who comes in and checks the house, you all have to move out, So you have to play all of these games just to try and move. And I never saw my parents happy. The only time I saw them happy were at the parties, right? So I feel like there's this big thing at the moment of people owning heaps of houses and stuff and all going, oh, but I work hard. And I'm like, I now own houses and investment houses and a business. And it's never as hard as me being homeless or me having to work 100 hours a week on minimum wage like my parents for 40, 50 years. Like that's hard work. That's hard work as all the prices and inflation and all of that. Now, you work that hard. The only time that you see happy because you're paying bills all the time. You get a little bit of money for yourself. You spend that on alcohol, gambling. You consistently do that. You're not liking where things are. People say the wrong things, and then there's a lot of violence, etc. at home, right? And then they're trying to tell us as kids to go through school where we don't see any examples of people who have gone through school who get a job and who are actually enjoying it at job. So we even got told that there's more outs going towards crime than through education, right? Because even when they do finish school, they get jobs and none of them are getting promoted or anything like that. So people are not really understanding the full impact of mums and dads not thriving, like be it surviving week to week, but how that impacts the family. So what we wanted to do within Indigenous growth is serve people like my parents, like my cousins, like all these ones who work really, really hard, in my opinion, a lot harder, right? Plus with all of that, everything else. And then your kids, they don't do what you say, they do what you do. So I know that if we have more of our family getting into leader, general manager, CEO roles, the next thing that their kid's going to be is at least a team leader, GM, or anything like that, which means that maybe they might only work 40 to 60 hours, which may mean they can actually take care of themselves, which may mean they won't have to just be happy at the parties, which may mean that kids think that maybe this road is a realistic avenue, right? To be able to do that. So yeah, in regards to Indigenous growth, that's how we've developed the organization. That's why we go into companies. They're already the role models for their community. They don't realize that our Māori and Pacific workers, by them thriving even more, we can actually conquer some of those statistics that people have been working on for decades, for 100 years to actually dismantle.
Yeah, I like that. I just want to jump in. I love that story, and it's interesting that you bring up the Once We're Warriors story. For those who might have seen the movie, and Michael Moka, who just mentioned that was his typical upbringing, what he saw that was the normal, and then he was able to. He didn't really have the examples around him, but he for some reason he talked about seeing the light and just going towards the light. And it's quite interesting, brother, that you mentioned that because there's a lot of people who aren't able to do that.
Mhm.
What you've done, where they feel stuck, they feel trapped, or there's past trauma, and it's hard for them to move forward, even though they've got all these goals. Because you ended like even at a young age, you were a head boy at Kelston Boys, right? So even though you grew up with all this stuff, like you were able to turn your life around for some reason. Like, tell us about like maybe some advice as well for our people out there. It could be young, it could be mature audience, people who might feel stuck or trapped because of the past. There's a lot of pain there they're carrying. Like, how do they move forward and really achieve their potential?
Yeah, man, awesome question, bro. I'm thinking that I'm still very similar. Like I don't like it when people go, if I can do it, you can do it too. Because when I was 15, my now wife, we had to leave home. We always called ourselves self-homeless, right? We had to stay in a car. We had to go to the West Wave pools to have showers. And we thought it was cool because you're just making it work. It was free for under 18 back then, right? So you have a shower. Like we would work doing the Herald in the morning. We would have a shower. This is at 15 years old. I put my 72-year-old nan on the like, because you weren't allowed to be under 18 to work for New Zealand Herald. So I put my nan, got her signature, right? And then you do the Herald in the morning. Then you'll go to, you have a shower at the West Wave. Then you go to school. And then after that, you do the Western Leader. And then you go do landscaping or concrete or whatever, right? Because I was a pretty big 16-year-old or 15-year-old. So I could get away with it. And that's what you would do to survive. And by the time I was year 13, we had already, like, we were by then renting our own whare, our own house, like, and we had all the parties at our house because we were the adults by the time we were 18. And everyone always goes, oh, well, if you can do it, we can do it too. Well, you shouldn't have to, right? You shouldn't have to. I actually don't like telling the story because sometimes people go, well, look, if he can do it, I'm like, well, Why are kids sleeping in the car and then going in there? Why is the environment not safe enough yet? Right now, for me, I'm still one of the few in my family that have gotten out. In terms of our family, though, if you have a look in past generations, we're cracking it. We don't even know what the back of a police car looks like, or, and then generation after me, we've had like three head prefects, all right, like from having no one who finished the school. So we're as a whānau, we're upgrading, right? In terms of the thriving success that we've had, my family either have to move to Australia to get even a tenth of what we've got, or it's just me. And we're always going like, I feel that 1 out of 100. Why? I always think of it as uh, and we do a little bit of this mahi and within our wānanga as well, is there like optimism is something that I have naturally. So optimism or learned optimism from Martin Seligman or positive psychology. I would I was quite optimistic, right? So as a child, even now, like yourself, as you said earlier, I had no problem in being invisible, and I love to perform, but I didn't mind people not knowing. But I was just whakama, I was just shy because I'm this poor snotty nosed kid, and I'm still in my mind, right? So like, who is this guy? And you only know us if you know us. But the awesome part of being invisible is that you develop empathy because you start seeing like the single mums who are giving their heart out. You start doing all of that. So in terms of my brain and how I'm wired, and quite a few of us, 1 out of 100 that have gotten out of our families, we notice that we have, we see stuff like we overcome adversity and we make it temporary, right? Or we achieve a goal and we make that permanent. Where in a lot of our family, they would, right? This is one of the frameworks we go through, is that they'll have a negative thing and they'll make that permanent, right? So they'll go, oh, we've got diabetes in our family. Oh, everyone's going to get it. So you might as well just feed them more lollies now, right? And start having stuff like that, right? And then something good happens and they go, oh, no, it was a fluke, right? Like that's the natural thing as Māori and Pacific. We use humility to put ourselves down and make ourselves smaller. And so for us, is like the 1 out of few, you start seeing something like we'll take some success and we'll make it big, right? Like for me, I said prefect at Kelston Boys, I went to uni and a fellow goes, some guy goes, oh yeah, but head boy doesn't matter now, you're in the big leagues. And I was like, oh no, if I can be head boy now, like in my mind, if I can be head boy and I wasn't the top in the school and I'm the only Māori in Pacific that wasn't in a sports team, hey, the only thing I had to my friend was a bit of kapa haka, right? Just to do that. If I can do that, this is going to be easy. Like that was my natural whakaaro. It wasn't oh, I'm head boy. Oh, I'm at a uni. Oh, head boy means nothing now. Nah, I take it. Like, no, I'm elite. You know, the only ones that look like me that used to get it, they were sports people. I was not a sport. I cracked it. Like I'm a leader, and I would take that. And this is in my mind. I would never talk like this. This is the only time I talk like it now. But I do see that amongst some of us that are trying to be that change for our family. We take our darkness and we make it small, our adversity, and we use it as our greatest competitive advantage. But then we take any small win and we magnify it like it is, the best thing since sliced bread. And then we're like, cool. And that gives us confidence to go to the next thing. The next, when I said, I want to start a business, everyone was like, there's not even a business like this. I'm like, I've overcome homelessness. This can't be that hard. Right? Like for me, it's just like simple. Oh, yeah, why not? Let's go. Because of all of those wins that I've just stacked upon, right? There's a lot of hardship. I wouldn't want anybody to go through the path that I went through. There has to be a better way for our children, right? But in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to be exceptional because of the stuff I've overcome. And I know that in my mind there. So I think that's a big thing when you're like, how do you see the light? Some of us, it's natural, and that might be the 1 out of 100. Our challenge is how to get the other 99 to start looking. And that's where the real frameworks come in. Start looking at it like seeing more the light than the dark.
I really like what you shared there. Um, for a lot of people, like if he can do it, I can do it. And I like that you flipped the switch on that perspective because when sometimes people can take that to the extreme, but it's like not comparing my story to your story to my story, my hardship to your hardship. It's just different. But it's more like what can I learn from that person to help me move forward, right? And I just like your story. The part that I really like, you talked about like you didn't know if you were poor or not. Like you just went and you just lived life. You went and had showers at the pools, even though it was free and stuff like that. But you didn't know any different. Like it reminded me of my upbringing. And I grew up in a family of seven children. My parents, working class, didn't have much. And I always looked at other kids. They always had toys and stuff for Christmas and all that. Our Christmas gift, with Christmas around the corner, but our Christmas gift was like our parents would just buy a TV and like, that's everyone's Christmas gift.
Mm.
But I always dream, man, I want Action Man figures. I want this and that, but I never grew up with that. But instead, I had newspapers, I had cardboards, and all I did was I created my own action figures using cardboard and newspaper. And my imagination just did the rest, and I just had fun with what I had. I didn't grow up thinking or drowning in like I'm poor, and all of that. And there's something there, and I like that, and how you said like, man, that's leadership. For some people, they might not say, I don't see myself as a leader. I can't
Mm.
imagine myself being a head boy. I can't imagine myself being a CEO of a company. Like, it's just so much there. But I want to come back to your calling with Indigenous growth, right? At what point did you feel like, man, this kaupapa, like this is my calling here, right? Because we're talking to leaders who are tuning into this podcast, right?
Mm.
They're trying to find their purpose, their mission, like leadership, like bring out the leadership in me, right? So is there anything that you could share around that? And also, was there ever a time where you felt like quitting on your kaupapa, and what kept you going?
So first part was I don't even think leadership was ever the goal, right? Like people go, man, you're so brave. I'm like, oh, that's not the goal, all right? Like you see a vision, a lot of people in faith, obedience is key, right? Like people will have all these excuses when your calling is just trying to hit you, and you have, oh no, but I can't afford this, I can't afford this. We were two incomes. We were earning more than anyone in our family ever had, right? All of that, about 24 years old. And, it was just a calling. And I try to do heaps of other stuff because I really enjoy business. And then what happened was, we just made the call. I'm like, okay, well, we've had two incomes, getting a bit too reliant on this. I'm going to quit my job and we're going to go through it, right? And sometimes it's that obedience and understanding that even if it failed, I would learn a lot more now than if I just continued to do the same thing, because everything I was like learning marginally, right? But sometimes to get outside of their comfort zone, you've got to go. For me, the vision was clear. A lot of people won't realize, but I actually graduated with accounting, marketing, and commercial law. So that was my degree at the business school. And then from there, I was getting in with the top four accounting firms because that's the path, right? You get an accounting degree. So mine was in financial accounting and auditing, and then I had some interviews in there for the top four. And then I had this other interview over here, and I was actually at the business school, and they were running executive education programs. And then I went through there and I researched, and I was like, okay, naturally we're going to go there, but why is this even coming in? And one of our teachers, Miss Hosker, she was working there. She goes, oh, have you ever thought about this? I work here now, back from Kelston. I said, you should come in and have a look. And then when I had a look, they were running like 2 day programs or week programs or stuff like that for executives. And they were paying $1,000 a day, like $2,000 for 2 days, 20 people in a room, right? So I'm like, uh, and you got to understand, coming from a person who wants to conquer poverty and you're only young, money is key, right? You're like, wait, why are these people paying 2,000 and they keep coming back? Right? So that's where like I made a whole call of my whole degree in that. That's why I tell people just study and finish it. All good. That doesn't mean it has to be your path, right? Because other callings might happen. And then I says, I'm not going to. Got an offer from two from two of the top four, and I took this role as a marketing assistant. All right, so I went into a marketing assistant role. But what I did over those 3 years is I learned what they learned. So I was in the executive. That's how I got into executive education. I was in the room, and I always say like, if you're the smartest in the room, find another room. All right, to be in. And I was getting in those rooms. I'm like, why are these people? Why are companies paying $1,000 a day and keep coming in? And I'm learning all their mātauranga. I was also the marketing assistant, so I was doing the contracts for the facilitators, so I knew how much they were getting paid. Right, so my natural part I was like, wait, how are these guys, right, getting paid that amount to be doing this? What is it? Hey, like we're just worrying about food on the table, roof over our head. These guys are paying for development, just and they keep coming back and they'll go on to the next program. So I started learning the stuff. I started to see my growth get exponentially higher, right? That's why I don't believe in if you've worked in a place for 40 years, you've got 40 years experience, right? Because you're not learning for 40 years. You don't drive for 40 years. You're on autopilot, right? But here you're getting better at a much faster rate. And I started getting that insatiable urge to learn. But over the years, I only saw 5 brown people, right? And 5 brown people. And that was over the 5 years. And then I realized, then they said, can you bring more in? We'll give a discount. We'll do whatever we have to do. I started bringing our people in because I said, no, this is awesome. Honestly, you just have to, don't worry about the messenger. If that's the case, listen to the message. I was going through all of this and they were going, it wasn't connecting. And now they go, why are people paying for this? This is a waste of time. Like it just wasn't connecting with our people. And in my heart, I knew, no, these tools can be life changing, right? This mindset change can be life changing, but it doesn't connect. And that's where I learned if things don't land, like if love doesn't land, it's not love. Hey, if aroha doesn't land, it's not aroha. You can have the best intent, but if it doesn't land, and that's where we actually came up with the idea of Indigenous growth, right? Because you just saw all of these gaps, right? And I'm like, how do we land? Went up to the marae, talked to my kaumātua pāhina rete. He went through some stuff like the Western tools are actually awesome, right? But it's missing our Indigenous wisdom, right? I didn't use Indigenous wisdom. Now that's a 15-year phrase, right? But I says it's missing what we've got. So how do we have that as a foundation to enhance the Western tools, right? To be able to do that. So a lot of the vision came from my story of wanting to send people home better than we get them, because a lot of them give the best of themselves to work and the family gets the rest to get into their thriving. That's a lot of the background story. But in terms of the vision of where we saw the gap and why we ended up getting a TED Talk, because still nobody does it globally, was because that was the innovation, was to take a 1% executive education type of field, right? Have a foundation of Indigenous values and that Indigenous wisdom to bring that in together and deliver it for our Indigenous people just hasn't been done, right? Because people are worrying about literacy, numeracy, right? Still all the core fundamentals, okay, like you would do with Zeducation. So we're not even worrying about what the high echelon of people are doing and all this opportunity. So from a business point of view and getting into the niche side, you're going, well, actually, there's so many things in terms of leadership. But if I can answer your last question, your second question, for those who are wanting to be leaders, right, or are in the space of leadership, especially with Indigenous people, please watch how you define humility, right? Humility has become something that's actually pulled our people back, what I've seen. Like number one reason why people Māori don't get promoted is they don't even apply. Because we come from a culture where you get thrust upon, right? It's not in our culture to apply. But I hear a lot of our Māori and Pacific people go, they should just know I want it. I said, no, if you don't tell them, they don't know. It's a different it's a different world. Humility, right? So a lot of the humility, people won't go for promotions. People won't go, like we've already got the skills. People will know 80% of the role and still not apply, right? Where in the Western world, if you know 20%, that's enough to apply. Because then when you get into the job, we're so afraid of making mistakes. No, actually, when you don't know 80%, you will learn faster. And those mistakes are the thing that's going to make you better. So you got to run into that fire. But so you're seeing a lot of contrast of instead of humility, thinking I'm going to get to the top, I don't want to be there. It's about the next generation. Well, I always challenge our people, you're being a gatekeeper, right? Get up to that role so our next generation, because they'll always beat us. Never think that they're not going to be. Never think you're going to hold them back, right? They're much faster than us. It's fine. So when we go up, you've paved the way. You've done stuff that other people don't want to do, and they're going to get there, right? And then they'll beat us. Like we'll be the trampoline that goes through. But we're seeing a lot of people who have all of it, and they're staying in their comfort zone of being awesome and the best worker in their thing, in their job, that they don't want to, that they use humility as an excuse to be small, right? They would rather be the best worker in the team rather than a person who can create 100 of the best workers. So we're constantly challenging our people on, please stop letting humility is important, right? Stop making humility a weakness. It was supposed to be a strength that our ancestors give to us. So that would probably be my biggest feedback for our Indigenous leaders out there.
I love that. It takes me back to my corporate days and my first job ever in corporate, and I was the only Pacifica in the team. There wasn't any other people in that space. And, I just had this mentality of I work really hard, like you said. Hopefully, somebody will notice and tap me on the shoulder and be like, man, Pasi, I've seen you, I've watched you. I think you have potential. You should apply for this role. Nah, because I was just waiting for somebody to
Mm.
recognize, putting all that weight on somebody else to be responsible for my journey, for my development. It's my responsibility. If I want something, just coming back to Michael Moka, and I love his mentality, his attitude, his story, because if you want something, find a way to get there, you know? Um, and I really like that. I really like that. It makes me also think. I want to go into the boardroom now, and I want to talk about Indigenous growth, and I want to hear what is it that you guys do and your approach to leadership. What makes Indigenous growth and your approach different from every other leadership program or service?
The key difference is the diversity and inclusion, the cultural competency, the Indigenous lens. And what we mean by that is a lot of organizations believe that cultural competency or diversity and inclusion is a separate arm. So when people ask, to the senior leaders, what is the training that the senior leaders know? And they go, it's always around knowledge and awareness and cultural awareness, etc. And so we challenge that for us to develop the lens and that aroha for other marginalized communities, for cultural communities, etc., that actually needs to be integrated in leadership development, right? So and that takes it from performative, where we just do, okay, this is how you learn how to do a karakia, and this is when you acknowledge mana whenua, and this is, and going through that. And that might also be because that's not what we specialize in. We are not reo exponents. We are not tikanga exponents. We're a leadership, we're a leadership consultancy firm, right? And so the thing that makes us different is that we integrate that together. So as a leader, you learn how to be inclusive as well as learning how to lead at the boardroom, learning how to manage hundreds of people, learning how to have courageous conversations and different communication styles and different learning styles, right? Like all of that is leadership, right? So when you're having people of marginal communities, so let's say we can say have our Maori community or our Pacific community or even our LGBTQ plus right community, as a leader, you'll understand frameworks, right? That just means instead of treating people how I want to be treated, how do I treat people how they want to be treated, right? So that's a huge part in understanding those elements because everybody, I genuinely believe, even leaders who go into a room and diminish everybody in the room, right? And I've seen that so many times. and they're ignorant and all of that. I genuinely believe that everybody is trying the best of what they got, right? The best of what they know. Okay, so even when it's not landing, right? It's not, they don't mean hate, but it lands hate. Everybody's trying the best with what they know. Actually, the tools is integrating that all in to how you develop at work, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody, especially the people that we serve, they spend a lot of hours at work. So if we can integrate that so they know how to work in, 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 hours, and they can execute it during those hours, they're going to have a lot more practice than people that go for a 2-hour class once a month, right? So the key part in terms of us is that all of the cultural capability or all of that lens of, I always say lens of aroha, right? Because people are just not making people feel safe inside organizations and mainly with marginalized communities. So if you're not part of the multitudes, you do not feel safe to be your whole self, right? Now that's a leadership component, not a awareness component, right? Because no matter how much you learn about me being Maori, you're not going to understand me being urban Maori. You're not going to understand about me fighting for a language that I never had, which is te reo Maori or tikanga or anything like that, right? It's so complicated, it's just, it's so complicated and trying to come up with a whole lot of checklists and any parts of that diversity that actually that needs to be integrated with leadership development from the front line to the board level, right? And just showcasing a lot more aroha in your leadership.
Nice. I love that. So it sounds like obviously Indigenous growth is all about, where you're from, your culture, who you are, your whakapapa, everything that makes you you, right? Your culture, everyone's different. Like you mentioned,
Mm.
whether you're Pacifica Māori, LGBTQ plus community, it's just like being like, what's your authentic self? Where are the roots of your values, and all of that, and then bringing that forward or blending that into leadership. It's not like leadership's a separate thing that I have to mold myself into. It's 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 like it's like looking in within myself. Who am I? And it's
Mm.
building upon that. That sounds like leadership. So if I'm going through like some of your programs, and maybe you can share an example. Maybe our audience loves success stories. You don't have to mention names or anything like that, but give us an example of where someone who's come through your program and the impact that it's had on them and their mahi, their family, etc.
Now, I think that's the best thing of what we do with Indigenous growth, and we actually get like real life feedback. So we only get them for a maximum of 6 months, and then that's what they do with that 12 months later. But when you've had over 1,500 Māori and Pacific leaders across 20 plus organizations, I think 13 different industries, here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, you hear all, huge spectrum of where they started and where they've gone, right? So you've had some organizations that have researched in terms of after they've finished, have they increased in role, pay, responsibility? So the more the formal type of results that they're looking at, right? So I think we had one organization that was roughly about $18,000 increase in salary after 12 months. 80% of people pay role or responsibility, right? So you're looking at those types of stories, promotions, etc. So we've had people that have, yes, been promoted, so been on the front line for 30 plus years, and then just taken a team leader role because they've always wanted them to be a team leader, right? Into, we've got a suite of GMs now, and even most recently, while one of our whānau was in the at the graduation, she just accepted her CEO role. So First Wahine and First Wahine Māori is the CEO of a huge public organisation. And those who follow Indigenous growth will know exactly who we're talking about. For us, it's the big part is in the actual vision, right? So the amount of I think when you're going into the program, it's quite intensive. and we have a certain objective we want to complete, but also it's a matter of context of where people are. So, for example, if somebody's at a GM level, and his whole thing was around, well, actually everything at work. Like I've never had a degree, and I've got 1,000 engineers under me, so that's not the problem, right? And I'm from Otara and all of that. Says it's just I need to, it's relationships at home, and that's the part that we've had to go through. So, in terms of it, it's a holistic area. I think our big part is for people to understand that being Indigenous is not just a superpower. So it's actually the foundation of who we are. That's the mindset change. So stop thinking, oh, I've got to be a great Western or mainstream or Pākehā first, and then this is what makes me unique. When actually, once we change it, like, no, this is your everyday, right? Because you still have to deliver with that, and then you have to execute. So that's a lot of our big challenge because I think, we have a lot of people that are in these mainstream organizations and they're not connected. So we have 80% have not been connected culturally, or they leave their cultural self at home if they are. And a lot of them now by the end know, oh, I can bring that in. And it's actually of benefit for everybody that's around because they're just so afraid of offending everybody. When actually, no, when I'm my whole self and I can lead, we all win, right? So yeah, I think we've got thousands of testimonials, videos and written from organizations, etc. It's just also depending on, we always say if they came on the program again next year, they'd probably think it's a whole new program because the things they take away from it is relevant for them now. And then they may have upgraded by next year and other parts of the program are relevant, right? So just to do that. So we always hear this quote, what's the point of climbing the ladder of success when you get to the top, you're on somebody else's building, right? And a lot of them are just trying to climb the corporate ladder, and you're wondering why people are trying to step on each other and all of that. And I tell them the view's not even nice when it's not your building, right? So what we need to do is figure out in terms of purpose-driven, color-driven, what is your building of success, and what do we need to do to climb that building of success? Because if it was my definition, I'd want all of them at the senior leadership table, right? But that's not everybody's definition of success. Okay, so once we define that and once everything aligns, down to your TV programs or whether you scroll, everything aligns for the person that you want to be rather than just following society.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, thanks for sharing it, brother. The proof is in the pudding, right? Eh, Michael just shared examples there, improvements, people getting increase in salaries, getting promotions. We just heard of someone who just got promoted to a CEO role, the first Indigenous person to ever hold that role within that company, public company. So that is huge. If that doesn't tell you anything, oh my goodness, you really need to tune into this. So there's some good stuff here that Michael shared with us. I like what you talked about around being Indigenous. Part of it is, or the starting point is the foundation of who you are, because that's identity, eh? It's like
Mm.
knowing who you are. And like, if you don't know who you are, you don't really know where you want to go, where you're going. You know what I mean? Like, I love that Indigenous growth is all about starting with who you are and building that foundation. Because a lot of people struggle with that imposter syndrome, this and that. People say this, people say that. You're trying to mold yourself. What is your definition of success or definition of leadership? Like, there's so many. It can just confuse somebody. But I love, going through this program helps you discover who you really are, be confident, and then bring that forward, eh? And how do you build upon that? Like, that's powerful. That is a powerful approach to leadership, and I love that. Um, Look, we're in New Zealand. It's very diverse. The political, the economic climate is very sensitive, especially when it comes to race, ethnicity. There's different opinions and perspectives. If, not to get all political here, bring it back into to business, the corporate culture, etc. We have emerging leaders, like people, the next generation. We talked about the next generation who are coming up, right? And there could be a lot of a confusion around, is my culture a strength? What's your advice to those emerging leaders, the upcoming generation, who probably feel pressured to leave their culture at the door, right, when they're coming into these spaces? What would you say?
There's always that quote, if you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for everything, you know? And it's a lot of that, like looking in the mirror type of kōrero, right? Like if like you need to stand for something, and it might be for your ancestors, it might be for your mokopuna that you don't even know yet, or their mokopuna. But it's you see a lot of people that go by the status quo, and a lot of it may be purely because they just want to pay their bills and put the roof over their head and food on the table. They don't have any free capacity to actually stand for something, especially when it comes to culture. For myself, and it's cost us a lot because we're officially a race-based organization. So you've seen government, all those government organizations, which is funny because we've gotten the best results. So what they did, so for example, they talk about more Maori and leadership, and we had all of those results that we talked about earlier, second to none, right? And so what they do in the within government is that they move the goalpost and they go, well, actually, we want more people, like they give all the money to the universities for development, right? We want more people getting degrees, which the research shows people who get degrees will get better paying jobs to start off with. From our side, that's not what we're talking about because we know many people who don't have degrees, all right? And we're talking about developing people that are in the organizations to take up those roles. So you'll have to understand that you can't let the uncontrollables control you, right? So, for example, before this government, the government wanted to be our sole provider, and it looked like a lucrative deal, multiple seven figures, all of that on what we're doing because we have all these private organizations. And straight away I went, normally where people would jump, and I'm like, yeah, 101, I learned you never rely on one client. All right. So it says, oh, okay, any government client's about 40%. And lucky because they all went, right, with the new government. And we're still alive because of the private industries. They see value in this, right? So they've kept us alive. So the big part is, and especially when you're talking in anything, as Maori and Pacific, and I really don't want to say this because sometimes it puts people off, but we don't get the opportunity of just being normal and landing in those roles, right? We're either mediocre or we're exceptional. Because those who get past the mediocre level, the amount of stuff you've had to overcome to not stay in your comfort zone, you turn out to be exceptional. And then you'll see those, we don't even have to serve them anymore because they just, as far as they want to go, opportunities will happen because they've already jumped over that hurdle. Where I've seen people of the dominant culture or have the most multitudes, they can. They can just wake up not wanting to do things and go, oh yeah, we've had many senior managers and CEOs come through and have a conversation and talk to their leadership team and they go, oh, I kind of just became CEO by accident. All right. I become a senior leader by accident. And I can tell you, none of our, and I'll specifically go brown colored skin, right? Because sometimes with our fair skin, because sometimes they feel a bit guilty, yeah, our fair skin, Māori and Pacific, and because they can sometimes be perceived in that. That gets them in the door, then they stand up for our people, me. And they go, oh, and they're getting promoted and they're getting looked at and they're getting all of that. Also, I tell them, you play the cards you got, right? Like, don't feel bad about that, right? What I can say, though, is in regards to the brown colored skin, none of them get to senior leadership by chance, right? Even our wahine, none of them get there by chance. Any wahine, they actually have to say and put a plan to go, I'm going to be senior manager, CEO, right? And that's Pākehā wahine as well,
Wow.
right?
Can we pause there?
Mm,
There's something here, right? There's something here, and a lot of our audience will resonate with this. It's interesting that you bring it up. There is a lot of fair skin Maori Pacifica. Like my children, like my wife is Maori Pākehā. She's fair skinned. My kids got fair skin, right? Even no one could ever tell they're Polynesian, maybe by their nose. They're Polynesian or Maori, but they're really fair-skinned kids. But you're saying, sometimes people get the opportunity to get through the door because of that. There's less judgment,
Mm.
because of the color of your skin, right? This is not so much about skin color, but it's more about like Maori for Pacifica in general. What can they do to get into those roles, right? What do they have to do differently? I know you mentioned one thing at the beginning where it's like, don't let humility be a weakness. You talked about like, have the confidence to apply for a role, even if you don't have the experience. If you know 20% of it, you'll learn 80% or 50% of it when you get in the role, if you successfully get it. Like there's all these things, right? Advice. Like uh, you talked about you've got to be exceptional, you've got to have a plan. Like give us some advice for our people out here. Talking to the pussy who was in corporate years ago and he never got a promotion or anything like that because he felt like, oh, I gotta wait for someone to notice me. Like we gotta break those barriers.
Mm.
What's two or three things that you could tell us that we should start doing as of today to start moving towards if we want to be like that leader, senior leader, CEO one day, what are we going to do to be exceptional?
Cool. Uh, so we use this kōrero because what we don't want people is we don't want people to just, we always say leadership is earned, but success is given, right? So leadership is earned, but success is given. And what we mean by that is leadership through service, everything that we do, awesome. Because remember, you still have to deliver. Please don't think that you got to skip those, right? And if you haven't made any mistakes, you haven't pushed yourself enough. I'll be absolutely honest. Like I failed more than anybody's tried. I'm a person, when I see other people get bankrupt, I don't see that as a negative. I see them as really pushing it beyond their limit, and now they have to learn, right? Those are just some other things that require development. But in terms of success is given, if we were to go to, in terms of three tips, right, is you need people to know that you want more, right? Because in some employments, some employers, some managers, sometimes they just need the hardest worker and they just need somebody that's comfortable, right? And that's good. And sometimes some people don't want to move. So you need to make your intentions clear, right? And go and have a look at getting, they call them sponsors, right? So don't just talk to your team leader. A lot of people think that they're just waiting for the next person to give their chance, right? Actually, you should be in other conversations. If there's workforce groups and projects and stuff like that, if there's any of that type of stuff, we need to be, when they are looking at a role, we need to be at the top of their mind, right? And then if they go, hey, Pussy, go for that role, right? And you should be having three or four people. That's because that's how you've hustled. This is what hustling actually is, not just working 20 hours a day, right? It's hustling the decision makers. I can be absolutely upfront. People make decisions emotionally first, and then they'll justify with logic later. If you're not the emotional choice, right, they are not going to ask you, even if you're the logical choice. All right. So what we need to do is we need to go have those conversations, look for those sponsors, put your hand up for roles. Like stop working overtime on the same role. You should be working overtime on stuff that's going to help you get to another level. And like I said, don't let team leaders go. Right. Second, what I would do is that, and I've done this plenty of time, is that I would get our people to figure out what's your role next and apply for 20 of those roles online. Right. New Zealand, Australia, Disneyland, it doesn't matter, right? Just to see if the market will tell you if you're worth it already. Don't just wait for your team leader or general manager role. But the big part of it is when they come back, give feedback. If you get a no, why? They might go, oh, you don't know how to build a strategy yet, all right? Or you haven't implemented a strategy. Guess what you should be learning in your overtime? Strategy, right? Go on LinkedIn, find the courses, get on a school board, all of that. Right? So this is fast track. So what I'm trying to say is you should never be doing overtime with the same job just for an extra $20, $30 an hour. Like that's literally stealing your $100 an hour job later. All right. So you should do your job that you need to do. And then you need to be working that, right? You need to be making that intention clear. If you do have cultural roles, I would figure out who the head of that HR is or anything like that and email them, go, hey, I live the authentic Samoan life. I have this church community. I have this. If there's anything that I can do so I can bring my culture to work, please, I would like to put my hand up. Right? Like something simple like that, you know, is something that like, oh, instead, what our people are waiting for is they're waiting for managers to go, oh, do you know much about this? Oh, yes, I do. If you're the one saying yes to them, they're the actual leaders because they initiated it, right? So you're still doing the cultural work, but whoever initiates it is the one who is seen as the leader. You're just responding, right? So that would be the second tip. Hey, all of this is around successes given. Third, and we got this from Annie Murray, the CEO of the New Zealand Film Commission, and that's the alumni that we're talking about, and Dan Walker, and he's the corporate for Indigenous Global of Microsoft. Um, and they both said the best fast track. So once you've gotten into the team leader roles, etc., fast track to senior leadership, you need to get onto boards, right? You need to get onto boards. You need to get at decision making from school boards to community charity boards to organization boards. And it's not just because you're going to be at the high level strategy board level, it's because it's also the context. So, for example, I was on a charity board when I started Indigenous Growth. Dan Walker, he was our chairman of the advisory board. We also had Jill Wong, which was associate dean of the University of Auckland Business School. Had Angus Fletcher of the Fletcher Building, because we had the connection with them with Life Education Trust, right? So you actually build all these relationships. These are all the people that, because you start hustling and you start delivering in certain areas, you'll get that tap on the shoulder that you will deserve, right? I'm going to tell you what doesn't work. Just doing your job really well. Going in and grinding on your job and hoping one person can see you. Okay, that doesn't work for our Indigenous people, right? We need to hustle, and those would probably be the 3 steps, since that's what Pasi asked, just to get us not just a team leader and management role, but from there into those senior leadership roles. So leadership is earned. You can't get that without putting the mahi in, but success is given. If your name is not being spoken to people like Pasi, so the fact that he has already heard my name, that means the hustling that I'm doing was working, right? And that's what inevitably got me the privilege of speaking on this platform.
Yeah, 100%. I can definitely confirm that. And just hearing your name everywhere I go, it's like, man, I got to meet this guy, have him on the podcast. It's our privilege, man. You know, you've just shared some amazing tips here for our audience. You know, it's about being proactive. You've got to let people know your intentions. And if you're too shy to say, hey, I want that role, just say you're interested, and then ask them questions. Just ask questions. You don't have to tell them that's what you want and try and convince them that you don't have to go there. It's like, hey, I'm interested in that role. What do I got to do to prepare for it? How do I get there? How do I learn to prepare for it? Just having those conversations, letting people know you are responsible for your own leadership development. And if you want to be exceptional, like Michael was saying, go out there, find opportunities, be on boards, volunteer for stuff that help you develop those leadership traits and skills. It's amazing. Michael, look, thank you for blessing us so much, brother, with your wisdom, the amazing work you're doing with Indigenous growth, and just sharing that with us on this platform. Look, if anybody's interested in learning more, because this was just a conversation, this was just a taste. If people want to go into a little bit more, your program for their leaders, how can they get in touch?
Yes, so currently we're in with organizations, right? So if you're in with an organization and they have leadership development, you get in touch so we can have a kōrero, so we can have a strategy on how to talk to your head of people, head of leadership development, organization development, So that's kind of the best way to contact to be able to do that. Other than that, I know we're on the social media. Our big part now is with all the negative connotation that happens within Māori, Pacific, Te Tiriti, etc. We're just trying to share all the positive. Hate will never beat hate, so we want to just put aroha out. So please engage with us, and yeah, just come in with the journey. At the end of the day, we're just a whānau out in West Auckland, doing what we are meant to do. And all of these extra accolades that our pasi keeps talking about, we don't even realise because we're just whānau doing the mahi, just like you. So, yeah, e mihi ana kia koutou.
Yeah, I love it. It's all aroha, all love. And there you go. Search up Michael Moka. Look up his TED Talk on YouTube. If not Michael Moka, type in Indigenous Growth. You can find them on social media, Facebook, especially on LinkedIn. So definitely follow this guy. Again, thank you so much, Michael Moka, founder and Chief Executive of Indigenous Growth. Thank you for your time, brother.
Yeah, tēnā koe, brother. Appreciate you, man.